Hey everybody, Taz from Critical Thinking Anarchist here, and this is what Trump does. How do people not know that at this point? That this is what Trump does. Um, so if you've seen the news at all over the last few days, so Trump agrees to pause tariffs on Canada and Mexico after pledge to boost border enforcement. Um, so throughout the campaign, Trump discussed tariffs and bringing tariffs back, and for a long time, that's how the U.S. made its money on goods and services, and until they implemented the income tax and property tax, all stupidly, I might add, and then they more or less got rid of a lot of the tariffs over the years, and they made it easier and cheaper for businesses to go elsewhere. So think about it this way. It is cheaper, and I mean this, it is cheaper. It takes about 6 months for those massive container ships to go from China to the US. That doesn't include manufacturing. That doesn't include shipping to the ship, transporting to the ship from the factory or whatever else. It is cheaper to do that and wait that lead time, that anywhere between 6 and 12 months, to wait that lead time than it is to manufacture in the United States, to manufacture in Canada, even to manufacture in Mexico. Now, Mexico, it might actually be pretty close in Mexico, but the biggest problem that you got down in Mexico, of course, is that, I don't care what the Mexican president says, it's run by the cartels. You can't do anything there without going through the cartels. You got to get their approval. You probably got to give them kickbacks, whatever. So they do have that issue, but think about that. Cheaper to set up and run factories out of, not usually, you're not setting them, to pay for goods out of China than it is in the U.S. and wait almost a year, 6 months to a year for your goods. So anyway, back to the whole thing. Now with Mexico, we'll say this: it is probably 95% of the border, 95% border, 5% trade war. But between the human trafficking, between the immigrants just coming in on their own, between the drugs and whatever else that are coming through, the border is a giant issue between Mexico and the United States. Now, on the other side, on Canada, it probably is the opposite. It's probably 95% trade war, 5%, the border issue. But, so he secures the deal with Mexico, says, hey, you got to put troops on the border. You got to stop. You got to do your part to actually stop this. You can't just say, okay, we'll kind of, we'll allow people back in. We'll stop it from happening in the first place. That's his thing. Stop it from happening in the first place. And with Mexico, the deal was, Mexico agreed and said, yep, okay, we'll send troops up there. We'll do this. You got to stop the guns from coming into our country. And Trump said, sure, I can agree with that. You don't want these guns coming through. Fantastic. Everybody agrees. Quick deal. Everybody's happy. Now, a long time ago, Trudeau had said, during this whole thing when Trump was talking about the tariffs and everything else, he's like, this is what Trump does. He does this. He goes big. He says these things. He's like, and then you work it out, and for the most part, you never worry about it. But as it got closer and closer, as it became more real, Trudeau showed his true colors. He freaked out and showed his hand and said, it's going to hurt you more than it hurts us. Well, not really. Not really. And he knew that. But, and Trudeau is already weak. He's already stepping down. But he really showed just how weak he was during this. And it really, really, really put him in a terrible light. Where, at least with the Mexican president, she stood her ground. She's like, she lied straight up saying, oh, we're not run by the cartels and this is gonna, but she was saying, I don't know what more you really want from us, and then when he said, I want you to stop the border, that's it. I want you to stop the border. That's always been his position. And she went and said, okay, I get it. I understand. We can do this. We can do that. Fantastic. Trudeau, like I said, he freaked out. He backed down so hard. He tried saying, "Well, we're gonna do retaliatory tariffs, and oh, you're gonna be sorry, Mr. President. You're gonna be sorry." Um, and Trump presented him fairly reasonable terms. Okay, you got to do more on the border. I think it's a little silly personally, but whatever. Um, but I was talking to my wife about all this yesterday, and she's like, "Well, I don't understand this. And this is what a lot of the media talking points is saying the same thing as well. I don't understand this. Why are you going after your friends? Why are you going after your closest allies?" Now, everybody understood when you went after Colombia and small guys. You got to go after the small guys. You can't let the small guys try it and show you up and be like, "Well, we're not going to do anything." The U.S. funds the world, whether you like it or not. The U.S. funds the world. Now, that isn't directly necessarily, for a lot of them it is, um, but I mean that's through trade, that's through commerce, that's through direct funding, that's through indirect funding. That you got all these different ways of funding the world. Even China, China is right there as far as monetary stuff, but a lot of China's money is the U.S.'s money. If it wasn't for all the goods and services that we get from China, their economy would not be anywhere near as robust as it currently is. So again, back to Trudeau. Okay. So everybody's going like, "Well, I don't understand this. Why are you attacking your friends?" Well, you attack the little guys. You gotta attack the little guys. You show your strength. Okay, you showed your strength. All the rest of the countries in the world going, yeah. We do the same thing. We do the same thing. And even with Mexico, they've seen the border crisis. They've seen this, and they go, okay. Some of them agree with it. Some of them don't, but they understand it. They get it. They get Mexico. Okay, you got the border issue. This has been a big thing for years and years and years. So okay, we may not necessarily agree with it, but we understand that one. So if Trump had just gone after Mexico, nobody would have questioned anything. Everybody would have been like, "Well, you probably shouldn't really go after Mexico, but I get it. You want to get the border solved." The fact that he went after Canada, that sent a message, and that's what I was trying to tell my wife. I'm like, this sends a message. This sends a message to the world. She's like, "What? That you're going to attack your friends?" I'm like, "No, that you're not going to be beholden to anybody. Nobody is safe. Nobody gets a free pass. So you have to, sometimes you got to treat your friends like your enemies. Unfortunately, so hey, he got the win on Mexico and Canada. Now, again, once Trudeau showed he was that weak, Trump had him. And Trump knew he had him. Once Trudeau started saying, "Well, you're going to be sorry, Mr. President," Trump was like, "You're mine." I mean, Trump already knew that from the first term anyway. But yeah, I mean, there was nothing there. So, I mean, this is why he's saying, the EU, I'm coming after you. China, I'm coming after you. The UK, maybe I might come after you. He's like, nobody is safe in this. I'm going to talk to everybody, and I'm going to get what I want. Now, again, when you're a lot of the smaller countries, you don't really have much of a choice. The U.S. is your direct funding. When you're these other nations, when you're Russia, when you're the EU, when you're the UK, when you're Australia and New Zealand and China and Japan and whatever else, when you watch them go after the small countries, no big deal. Whatever, of course you are. When you watch them go after Mexico, again, like, well, maybe we should be a little bit afraid. We got to take them a little bit more seriously, but, everything's going to be fine. When you went after Canada, everybody said, "You went after Canada? This is your closest ally." And Trump said, "Yep. And look what I did. And I made them bend the knee. I made them bend the knee. What do you think I'm going to do to you? I'm taking it easy on these guys because they are so close and I have to deal with them. You think you're going to get off light? No, not at all. This is what Trump does. This is what he's always done. He presents himself strong. He always presents himself strong, but he comes from a source of strength. The U.S., again, funds the world. the basics of the stock markets in the rest of the world, oil and natural gas and everything else are traded mostly in U.S. dollars because the U.S. is the funding of the world. So yeah, this with the fact that Mexico and Canada both agreed, and it's only 30 days. It's only 30 days, and that goes quick. Now, it's very, very, very likely that it will last longer. That he'll come to some sort of other thing. But this was the stepping stone. This was the shot heard around the world, if you call it. I mean, if you looked at the stock market yesterday before that final deal with Canada, even with the deal with Mexico, stock market kind of came back, and after he dealt with Canada, and everyone went, okay, he's not tanking the economy yet, but the economy across the world shrank by a full 1 to 2% almost across the board, all the stock markets in not just the US. I'm not talking just the US stock markets. Around the world, the stock market shrank by about somewhere between 1 and 2%. And everybody's going, this guy is willing to do. In the first term, everybody was afraid Trump was willing to press the big red button. He thought, they all thought they were going to go to thermonuclear war. He didn't do it. In fact, he was largely considered I don't care what the other side says. He was largely considered the most peaceful president in modern history, or possibly even in history, because he didn't start any new wars, and he pulled out of several. That's not to say he didn't attack people. That's not to say people weren't killed under his watch or anything like that, and that he didn't order any of those, but he didn't get involved in anything new. And he's the first president, at least in modern history, not to get involved in any new conflicts. But now he is waging economic war, which is way scarier in many aspects. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But again, this is something Donald Trump knows. Donald Trump knows business. He's not much of a politician. And I've said it before. He's not a politician, but he is a businessman. And you can kind of, decide for yourself what you think about that business. But, maybe you think he's bad at business. Then you should be terrified. If you think he's bad at business and he's making these business deals, you should be terrified. If you think he's a good businessman and he's making these deals, then at least you understand what he's going to do next. Anyway, you guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Did it freak you out? Are you still worried about the future? Do you think he knows what he's doing? Do you not think he knows what he's doing? But in the meantime, please let me know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I will see you in the next one. You take care. Bye for now.